What's going on, guys? It's me, Zach, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. This one, I'm going to go over a couple waiver wire ads at each position ahead of Week 9. We're through 8 weeks, and we finally really had a sort of a coming out party for the offenses this week. It was really fun to see all the offensive explosions. A lot of star players had 3 touchdown games. It's just overall really high scoring games. Probably a lot of you had some of your highest scores of the week. Maybe some of you guys lost even then, but just shows that a lot can change week to week, and it's really important to make sure we make our teams better as the season goes on. No matter what you're at right now, you're by no means the season over. I've got one team that's 3-5, and I'm sure that I'll find a way to make it better. And I've got a couple teams that are 7-1, 6-2, and I'm by no means counting on those or banking on those teams doing anything either. So just gotta make sure that we keep making our teams get better and better. Waiver wire is one of the best ways to do that. I personally think that really between that and trading is the best ways to improve your team over the course of the season, and that's really where a lot of people and managers can differentiate themselves from the rest of their leagues because they've stayed active, and by the time the season's over, they'll have made their team a lot better than it was after the draft. So before I do get into the video, I want to take a minute to thank everybody for all the support. It's just been really cool to see the channel grow. If this is your first time on the channel, thank you so much for stopping by. If you do get anything from this video, please do give it a like. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. You can click the bell so you get notifications when we put out more videos. I do 3 videos every single week, and I'm just here to help you guys win your fantasy championships and help you guys do as well as you can, and hopefully have some fun along the way. But with that, let's get into the quarterbacks. Starting off with the quarterback position, my number one waiver wire ad this week would be Justin Fields, not Marcus Mariota. Justin Fields has looked really good over the last couple weeks. I know they did lose this last week to the Cowboys, but their offense actually looked really good. He had probably his best, honestly, one of the best performances of his career, even in a loss. This game was a lot closer than the final score would suggest. There was sort of a fluke fumble return for a touchdown that sort of turned things towards the middle part of the second half. But this game was really competitive, and Justin Fields looked really good. He's really getting involved in the rushing game a lot more. They're finally starting to use him in that way, and he's developing quite a bit as a passer. He's still not elite by any means, but he's given you enough there that I think he's probably a top 12 play the rest of the season just with how much he's running the ball. And the next month for him is really awesome. He's got a matchup against the Dolphins this week. Then he gets the Lions and the Falcons. So I think the Jets are right after that, and the Packers. So really awesome matchups for Justin Fields. He'd be my number one ad here. And the next 2 guys you can add if you're looking for bye week fill-ins are going to be Marcus Mariota and Jared Goff. Mariota's got a good matchup this week against the Chargers, so he should have some value. He's got a nice rushing floor. And then Jared Goff's a guy, this is a team with a really bad defense. They're going to have to put up a lot of points, and Jared Goff is serviceable enough if you need him in a bye week. So all 3 of these guys are decent ads, but Justin Fields will be my main ad this week at the quarterback position. So moving on to the running back position, there aren't really a whole lot of automatic plug-and-play guys in the waiver wire. It's generally really hard to find those guys at the running back position unless there are injuries in the previous week, and we fortunately didn't really have any notable injuries this week at the running back position. The main injury I'd like to point out is that Gus Edwards did leave the game on Thursday banged up. It sounds like he's going to be week to week. I would expect him to miss this following week, but do keep an eye on it. But assuming he does miss, that would put Kenyon Drake and Justice Hill in line to get most of the work for the Baltimore Ravens. And Kenyon Drake honestly looks pretty good. He's been honestly a lot more explosive than I thought he would be. He's old, but he's still performing, and he's definitely their pass-catching running back as well. It's not normally a role that's super valuable for the Ravens, but he's getting some work there, so that gives him a nice little baseline. And this is a Ravens team that's going to run the ball a ton, and Kenyon Drake looks okay. So if you do need a plug-and-play start at the running back position, Kenyon Drake's going to be your guy this week. After that, there's a lot of guys that are sort of just handcuffs that I think need to be rostered in pretty much every league. Isaiah Pacheco, I have him still sort of viewed as a handcuff for me, but he wasn't named the starter for the Chiefs. Maybe we see him get a lot more work coming out of their bye. Khalil Herbert is definitely in a timeshare with the Bears now. He seems to be sort of overtaking David Montgomery a little bit. He outcarried him 16-15 this week. So Khalil Herbert's honestly super talented as well. If he's not owning your league, he absolutely should be. And honestly, Khalil Herbert would be a guy I'd be kind of willing to trade for, even in leagues where maybe you're set at the running back position now, but you want to use him down the stretch. And then guys like Rachaad White, Alexander Mattison, and James Cook are some really nice low-end handcuffs as well. Rachaad White and Alexander Mattison have some massive upside if anything were to happen to Dalvin Cook or Leonard Fournette. And then James Cook is a guy who, honestly, he's clearly overtaken Zach Moss as the number 2 running back in this offense. And we know this is going to be an offense that puts up a ton of points. He's a rookie, and we saw him be significantly more involved after their bye week. I'd expect his involvement in this offense to only increase as the season goes on. They didn't spend a second-round pick on him for nothing, and if anything were to happen to Devin Singletary, I think that would make James Cook like a top 15 running back. So I think James Cook does need to be rostered in almost all leagues. I think Kyren Williams is another guy I'm pretty interested in. He has been on the IR for the Rams for like the whole season. He got hurt on the opening kickoff of week 1, but they've spoken very highly of him. And they had Ronnie Rivers, their lead back this week, with Malcolm Brown and Darrell Henderson, each getting like 6 and 5 carries themselves. This is a running back room that's wide open, and this coaching staff clearly likes Kyren Williams. We know that this is a backfield that has generally been fantasy friendly, so Kyren Williams is definitely worth a flyer because there's not necessarily an injury required for him to be relevant. I wouldn't bank on him, but I mean, if he comes back this week and has a really good game, suddenly he's going to be the number 1 ad off waivers. So go ahead and beat your league mates to him and take him this week. And then Deion Jackson's another guy I'm interested in. We saw Jonathan Taylor leave this last game with a bit of an ankle injury. He may have re-aggravated it. He did come back in the game, but maybe they gave him a week to heal up. And if they do, Deion Jackson, we've seen him perform really well before. And there's also a world that exists. There are rumors out there that Nyheim Hines has been involved in some trade offers. So if the Colts were to trade Nyheim Hines, it's possible that Deion Jackson might slot his way into that passing down role himself. So he'd be worth an ad, maybe even if we don't get Dave Taylor news at all. And then Dearness Johnson, he's only worth an ad for me if Kareem Hunt is traded ahead of the deadline tomorrow. So keep an eye on that. The Browns did win tonight, so I doubt they'll make a move there, but he's openly expressed a desire to leave the team. They used him a ton today, which surprised me. I think they might have been trying to showcase him for that trade. So it is possible that Kareem Hunt gets traded tomorrow, and if he does, I do believe it would be to the Rams or maybe the Bills or something. So obviously, if Kareem Hunt is traded to the Rams, Kyren Williams doesn't need to be rostered. And if he's traded to the Bills, then James Cook doesn't need to be rostered. But I imagine you could have figured that out. So yeah, with that, let's move on to the receivers. So moving on to the wide receiver position, I think my number 1 waiver ad this week would be Kadarius Toney. I would imagine that he was picked up last week after the news came out of his trade to Kansas City. But if that hasn't happened in your league yet, I think he's going to be a must-add in pretty much all leagues. He's just an extremely talented player with the ball in his hands. He was a first-round pick last year, and he did have a blow-up game against the Cowboys. He had like a 220-yard receiving game. And when you just see him on the field, when he gets the ball in his hands, it seems like he can make some special things happen. He, in many ways, reminds me of Tyreek Hill. I'm not by any means saying he's going to be the next Tyreek Hill for this Chiefs offense, but the fact that that comparison is sort of valid, and obviously he's on the Chiefs, so it's going to be an offense that puts up a lot of points. They spent a 3rd and a 6th round pick to get him, so they wouldn't have done that if they didn't intend to use him. Sky Moore hasn't really come on. There are 3 other receivers here in Hardman, MVS, and Juju that have sort of underwhelmed. So this is a wide open wide receiver room, and they're just going to find ways to get the ball in his hands. He'll probably return kicks for them. I'm sure they'll design a lot of screenplays for him. He might get some end arounds out of the backfield, and obviously he's super athletic and fast as well. So there's a lot of upside here with Kadarius Toney. Is quite the wild card. If you're a team that obviously doesn't need to start this week, I don't think I'd want to play him his first week back, but I think there's going to be a lot of manufactured touches for a guy that's going to do a lot with the ball in his hands, and he's not tied to an offense that really does give him top 24 wide receiver potential if things break right. So he'd be my number 1 ad there. After him, Wan'Dale Robinson is worth an ad. I know he had a bit of a dud this week, but he's the clear number 1 wide receiver for the Giants. I wouldn't think too much about this last week. Probably not going to play him this week either, but actually I think the Giants are on bye. They are. So maybe he gets more involved as a rookie after the bye. You do see that often. So Wan'Dale Robinson would be worth an ad. Devin Duvernay is a guy that I'd be looking to plug in and play this week. Sounds like Rashad Bateman's going to miss this game. Mark Andrews is banged up. So Devin Duvernay has actually been really good. He's been extremely efficient with the touches he's given, and given that he'll have more opportunity here, I think Devin Duvernay is a guy that you can play if you need to. Darnell Mooney is another guy who's coming on. I touched on how favorable this Chicago Bears schedule is coming forward, and Darnell Mooney is a really talented player. He's the clear number 1 wide receiver for this team. So Mooney's going to be a guy that I think we can finally start trusting and playing. So if he is on your waiver wire, I think you can go add him now. Rondale Moore is another guy I'm interested in. He kind of had a bit of a breakout, like 7 for 92 and a touchdown this week. I think you can count on him for like a good 5 catches, 50 yards every single week. I think he'll be very involved in this offense, and he's just a decent plug-and-play option. He'd be a guy that I think should be rostered in almost all leagues. Van Jefferson's another guy I'm interested in. We did see Cooper Kupp leave this game with an injury, which is really unfortunate, but it does sound like he's going to be okay. But if he were to miss any time, Van Jefferson would be the number 2 wide receiver for the Rams offense. And that's assuming that Allen Robinson is slotted in above him. I don't know, that's necessarily a guarantee. So I think that you should pick up Van Jefferson. He's a guy that certainly has upside going forward. He's always been a deep threat, but he's probably going to just be a dart throw. But in deeper leagues, I think he's worth an ad. And then Terrace Marshall Jr. is another guy I'm interested in. He is very clearly the number 2 wide receiver in this Panthers offense. They were throwing the ball to him in the end zone several times. He's a big body. I think he's got some touchdown upside, although there will be limited opportunities in this Panthers offense. But if DJ Moore were to get traded, he'd be a must-add for me. And then if not, in deeper leagues, he's definitely worth a look. Zay Jones is another guy. He played, I think, 100% of snaps for the Jaguars this last week. He's just a decent player. He's not a must-add, but he's a good little player. He gets some targets. He's involved in the offense. So he's a guy that you could play in any bye week as a fill-in. Then Joshua Palmer and DeAndre Carter. There are plenty of injuries to these Chargers wideouts. I think this offense is going to take a step forward as well, coming out of the bye, getting Keenan Allen back. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for both of these guys. I do prefer Joshua Palmer, obviously, but they're both decent guys that you could plug and play in your flex if you need to going forward. And finally, moving on to the tight end position, I think there are a couple of really good ads this week. Isaiah Likely would be a guy that I'd be looking to plug in and play, especially if Mark Andrews misses. I don't think you can play him if Mark Andrews is active, but unless we hear that he'll be on some sort of snap count. But Isaiah Likely is clearly a really talented player. This Ravens offense certainly focuses on the tight end position, and Isaiah Likely, he's good. So I think Isaiah Likely is going to be a guy that honestly might be a top 5 option if Mark Andrews were to miss time, and it's just hard to find tight ends of that caliber on the waiver wire. So he'd be a must-add for me, especially if I am the Mark Andrews owner. Just you have a start every single week. Greg Dulcich would be another guy I'm really interested in. He had a really promising first week of the season, healthy in week 7, having like 2 for 44 and a touchdown. And he followed that up this last week with 4 for 87. Got tackled on the 1-yard line as well, so it could have had an even bigger day. Greg Dulcich just looks really good. Russ is clearly looking for him, and he'd be a guy that I'd be looking to be willing to hold through their bye. Evan Ingram's another guy I'm interested in. He's been just really the main part of this passing attack for the Jaguars in the last couple weeks. Christian Kirk's sort of slowed down a little bit, and Evan Ingram just looks good. He's always been a talented athlete. He just hasn't really been able to put things together on the field, but Evan Ingram's decent. This is a Jaguars offense that isn't horrible, so Evan Ingram's a decent tight end option as far as they go. And then Mike Gesicki, he's been pretty involved the last 3 weeks with 7 targets in each of the 2 games before this, then coming up with 3 catches and a touchdown this last week. And there is a non-zero possibility that gets traded tomorrow if Gesicki were to get traded to a tight end needy team. I think he could see a boost in value as well. But Gesicki does seem to be like the number 3 passing option in this offense, and he's always going to have touchdown upside. This Dolphins offense does look really good. So Gesicki would be a guy that I wouldn't mind picking up and playing as well. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter @RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.